The psychology of reasoning is a branch of cognitive psychology that studies the way in which humans use logic to come to conclusions based on available information. But not all reasoning is valid, and people may use invalid reasoning to come to illogical conclusions. So just how logical are we as humans? And for that matter, how logical are you?
We observe water behaving like this, and like this, but you say it behaves like this. So why doesn't it behave like this? If the oceans are pulled to the earth by gravity, and the strength of that gravity varies with the distance from the centre of the earth, then why doesn't the water follow the shape of the seabed?
They're up to about 1/4 of an inch round. So as you can see, more droplets. So as far as I'm concerned, this means that water actually does curve, and this supports spherical Earth. So the only question that remains, is this possible on a larger scale? Can blobs of water form spheres of larger diameters? And experiments actually done in aircraft doing zero gravity maneuvers show that it is a reality that blobs of water of up to 4 or 5 inches in diameter have formed spherical shapes. So this totally supports the spherical Earth, and that water will stick to a spherical Earth. They're up to about 1/4 of an inch round.
Smart learning for all.
Topic: surface tension. Why are drops spherical?
Because personally, I'm fond of spherical shapes as compared to squares.
Nah. It is because of surface tension. Surface tension is the property of liquids by which surface molecules of a liquid try to hold the liquid together by acquiring minimum surface area and acting like a stretched membrane.
You know what? Everything just went over my head.
Alright, I'll explain. Inside a drop, each water molecule is pulled with a force by its neighboring molecules. As these forces are equal and opposite, they get neutralized. However, the molecule present at the surface is not attracted outwards. It is attracted only inwards and sideways. Sideways forces get neutralized, but because of the inward force, each surface molecule contracts to form a shape that has minimum surface area, which is a sphere.
Cohesion is the attraction that occurs between a liquid's molecules. This attraction is caused by a difference of charge. The law of electric charges states that like charges will repel and unlike charges will attract. It is this law that governs cohesion within liquids. Adhesion is another property of liquids. It is the ability of a liquid's particles to attract to different particles. Look closely at this water in a container, and you'll notice that it seems to climb up the walls. Adhesion plays a role in the creation of a meniscus in a graduated cylinder. Water will climb upwards in a straw because it is attracted to the straw's walls. This occurrence is known as capillary action and plays a major role in our everyday lives. One way to demonstrate water's attractive ability is to negatively charge a balloon by rubbing it with fur. Watch the stream of water attract to the balloon as it is moved nearby. The negative charge of the balloon will attract the positive hydrogen atoms in the water molecule, and thus the stream attracts to the balloon. Capillary action allows plants to draw water into their roots and transports the water through them. This experiment with celery shows the transport of blue-colored water through the stalk. and into the leaves. Both properties of cohesion and adhesion together are responsible for some of water's most unique behaviors: its ability to stick to itself and to other materials as well. Consider a drop of water. What makes droplets anyway? The answer is cohesion and surface tension.
What flat earthers seem to think is a core argument in their quest to prove that the earth is flat. And it basically, I'm sure you've heard it, it goes something like this: water always finds a level, water's always flat, there's no level on a sphere, or water can't curve on a sphere, or if you pour water on a ball it just falls off. I mean, various versions of this thing that because water is flat, that the earth must be flat. And the first thing to say is it doesn't even stand up as an argument, because all they're doing is observing that water is at least approximately flat on a small scale. And there's absolutely no justification for leaping to the conclusion that it must be flat on a large scale. There's none. There's no intellectual justification for that claim at all.
And look how much farther in the water is. There it is, sitting in the water with all that reflection.
And there's absolutely no justification for leaping to the conclusion that it must be flat on a large scale. And there's absolutely no justification for leaping to the conclusion that it must be flat on a large scale.
Look at that.
And there's absolutely no justification for leaping to the conclusion that it must be flat on a large scale.
That's Cutter's Rock. We're going to get on the other side to see what the sign says. See which bird rack this is. But we are way offshore. It just says Cutter's Rock. Okay, so this is Cutter's Rock. Whoa.
There's absolutely no justification for leaping to the conclusion that it must be flat on a large scale.
Last night at his birthday party, he made a wish that I wouldn't be able to lie for one whole day.
Holy shit, Batman. Superman refraction. There's Cutter's Rock. Look at that. There's Cutter's Rock. Sure as shit out there. That's Cutter's Rock. Look at that other boat way out there. Holy crap. There it is, look at that. That's a big old boat. Way, way behind Bayport. Here's Cutter's Rock. And look how far back you can see the water. Behind that boat. Or behind that rack. Wow. Wow. Let's do this again. Holy shit, Batman. Superman refraction. That boat should be way underneath the curvature of Earth. There's Bill Watts. Its light ain't on. That's why I couldn't see it. And its light ain't on yet. Okay. So we'll go to Billy Steele. There's Billy Steele. We're going to keep going. And look at that. Yeah, you can still see water beyond it, like where that boat was at earlier. People say, no, there ain't water beyond that. Yes, it is. So that's Cutter's Rock. Yep, that's Bayport. See if we can get that other rack. There's a sign there. It was right there. There's that other rack. Aha! That's the north rack.
All right, you can beat this. It's all a matter of willpower. Test. Something small. Red. Red. All right? Now focus.
This is the land I was filming from the other side. Beach is that direction. I will grab my coordinates from here. There's the rocks. Okay. It's shadow down there. This is how I'm filming. Just above the water. Just a few inches, not even maybe the width of my phone. That's how I'm filming.
The color of this pen is...
Here's Peninsula. It's about 1.6 miles away. There's a little pathway that goes from the peninsula all the way to the little island out here, which is 1.3 miles away. As you can see, there is water, at least where the camera is right now. It's at 5.5 feet off of the water approximately. I'm going to get down to the water's edge to see if I can see water beyond that little pathway. There we go, there's water behind the peninsula.
The color of this pen is red.
Just the islands, water behind it, and both sides. Definitely water behind that. Alright, I'm going to try one more test here. There you go. The point is 1.3 miles away. This time. Okay, I'm in the water. A little scary, but as you can see, still very visible. Maybe, what, 3 inches above the water? My hand's absolutely in the water right now. I'm going to pull out my cell phone and show it to you. You can see, there's the water. It's beyond that point, 1.3 miles away. I'm actually in the water. See, the waves are going past me. Just a few inches, maybe the width of the camera, in the water. You can still see beyond, especially when I zoom in. You can see there's the water. It's beyond that point. .3 miles away. I'm actually in the water. See, the waves are going past me. This is a Tapu conspiracy. I just finished filming that direction to test the horizon, and again, that point is about 1.3 miles from here, and I could definitely see water beyond that 1.3 miles, even when I placed the camera with my hand into the water, so it's just a few inches above the surface of the water. If you think that there's some sort of super refraction that's bending that water up behind that ridge there, it's absurd. Absolutely absurd. Come on, use some common sense here. Something's wrong with the model. I mean, you have to at least admit that the Earth must be bigger than they're claiming. But evidence keeps confirming the Earth is flat, the model's false. Have some bravery and stand up for the truth. Thank you.
The color of the pen that I hold in my hand is royal blue.
When we get to science, it's about claims that are being made about the world have to meet empirical observations and tests, and that has to be repeated. So I encourage everybody who watches this video, test water, test it thoroughly until you know yourself that the water will not conform and cling to the exterior of any object. We will highlight here meniscus and adhesion. These are well known and understood, right? But at the same time, you're going to see them demonstrated within a container. Now, I can then claim through deductive reasoning and observations that the Earth must be a container. Anybody out there who wants to insist that at some unspecified larger scale that the physics of liquid and how we know it starts to change, the burden is on them. There is nothing magical about oceans. You don't get to a specific area of the ocean where there's a magic that starts to happen. You know, even if there's an increase and decrease in pressure, the surface of liquid will always be level, horizontal, flat. Now, flat doesn't mean perfectly flat. You know, we have wind, we have other, you know, factors impacting on the surface of the water. There is currents underneath, there is wind on top, we have waves, we have swells, we know these things. But the body of water must be level, it must be contained, because it doesn't flow anywhere, right? So, you know, we don't accept sophism, where people are going to come and say, oh, but it has to be bigger, it has to be bigger. Oh, a football or a basketball in no way, you know, represents the earth. Well, that's your claim. Your claim is that we live on the exterior of a spherical object, and you're claiming that liquid conforms and sticks to the spherical object. Now, if we go and we apply, you know, that claim and we look for it in a practical sense, if it doesn't hold up, your claims are rubbish. That's science. Okay?
I'm lying, I can't say it! Alright.
And a container. Okay? Now this. Look, look, look. Oh, drip of water. The water is spherical. Yes, again, adhesion and surface tension. Okay? So, if I try to get the whole body of water to cling to my hand, it's not going to happen. As soon as you increase the volume, the behaviour starts to change, right? So, they show you these things on a minuscule level because they're trying to twist your mind. It is tactics of sophists. These people are manipulative, they do not represent science. They do not represent actual reality in any way, shape or form. They are devious, deceptive, lying people. Now these characters like ALK and Jed and Soundly Wolfie, these people are, I consider, criminals because they are actively denying reality. Now anybody else out there who actively denies reality and tries to push that onto others must be considered criminal because they are trying to warp people's perceptions and minds, take away actual reality from them and replace it with a fake. Now that fake is the globe. Globes do not hold water, okay? Especially potato-shaped globes that are flying through a vacuum with gas and liquid clung to it while spinning. Nobody can recreate that. Nobody can show you in any practical sense whatsoever. It is not scientific, right? Now I know for many people out there, you have heard the mantras of flat earth and how ridiculous it must be, but people, earth is a container. It has pressure and it is filled with liquid. It is a container. There is a huge deception going on to disguise that from you and take that away from you. You know, people out there, you need to stand up and realise this, right? No amount of images or videos are going to change the understanding of the physical world and what knowledge we have and how we apply that, right? Now again, people are going to say, oh, this video, this guy pours water on a bowl and expects us to believe that. It's a demonstration of how liquid behaves, right? You cannot get a body of water to cling to and conform to the exterior of any object or shape, right? As again, meniscus, adhesion, surface tension, we know about these things, right? We know about them. There are no arguments, there are no proof. Drips of water on branches, drips of water on the surface of a table. You know, I'll show it again. You know, people say, look, look, curved water on a flat surface. Let's try it again on the ball. Let's try and achieve the same thing on the ball. Oh, we've got a wee bit here, it's running away now. I can't even get a wee bit of it just to stay on the top of the ball. Running off, okay? Running off, seeking its level. Because water on slopes, water on declines, that's what happens. You know, investigate canals and canal systems and how they operate. canals are built level. Right? The level is no an equal point from the centre of the earth, because you know their claim is not that the earth is a perfect sphere underneath. It's a potato, odd-shaped rock. Right? So it's utter bollocks. Right? We deal with claims, we go to natural science, we go to practicality. Right, so again, for the sophists out there, quit with your videoed, idiocy of things being obscured by swells and tides. The body of water is level, okay? Liquid cannot display shapes upon its surface, which rules out the claim that you live on the exterior of a globe. Right? Any of these people who wish to come to the next live and refute what I'm saying and what I'm demonstrating with practicality, feel free to do so. Otherwise, shut up and let people explore the reality for what it actually is. I'm ripping the piss out of this idiocy that people are claiming. This is how liquid behaves. We talk about the scale aspect again, right? It's got nothing to do with scale. The point of the matter is that, I have some sea liquid here, right? The surface of the liquid, right? If I bend that bottle like so, the surface remains level and flat from one point to the other point, regardless of if I extend this 100 miles in that direction. At what point exactly do you think that the surface of the liquid, at each step along the way, what magical aspect happens that allows it to bend, magically bend? It's utter nonsense, right? Doesn't matter how big it is. That's how liquid behaves. Level is established by understanding water. It is a property of liquid. That is what we use to establish level. Okay? That's what defines level. Right? So it doesn't matter how big the body of water, the crack that you're filling in with liquid, it will seek its level and the surface will be horizontal and flat. Bodies of water, as I'm going to highlight over and over and again, do not conform to the exterior of shapes. They take the shape of their container. Right? Earth is a container. You keep scaling up your examples from a bottle to a sink to a bath to a swimming pool to a lake, dam, ocean. The physics are the same. Right? You will never get the surface of a body of water to bend. Okay? No matter what I do with that bottle of water, that liquid will always do the same thing. Right? Let's step outside the box for a moment and see if you're capable of a thought experiment. Assume a giant sphere with the magical ability to suck things down on its surface. We'll assume it's magic and works on everything. Okay, can you accept that premise of our thought exercise? No, I'm not into imagination, right? Now this is exactly what these people start trying. Imagination, thought experiments. When we're talking about natural science, substance and reality, you need practicality. You have to demonstrate your claims practically. So I'm not even going to go any further with your nonsense rab-s, okay? Oh my goodness, where is it? This is it. Justin Lorenzana. Water does not seek anything, Dell. Water responds to forces in nature as well as having its own forces. Inanimate matter is inertia and active with only reactive force. Life is inertia active, it applies directed force in nature. Walk around with a pan of water. Walk around with a pan of water. It reacts to forces. Right, now, Justin, you have just expressed walk around with a pan of water. A container, which is exactly my point. Okay, now while it's in that container I can exert wind, whatever other motion I want to exert on it, but the fact of the matter remains, it has to be in a container in the first place in order for me to even go ahead with the experiment. Okay?
No! Come on!
Spin a water bottle, it reacts to force. Remove the force of gravity in a zero-G plane, and just like in the ISS, we don't live on a zero-G fucking plane, and we don't live on the ISS, we live here.
Like that Neil Armstrong guy. Have you seen him on the talk shows?
Neil Armstrong, you mean the first man to walk on the moon?
Talk about a fish story.
Yeah.
Man, and they're buying it.
Oh, yeah.
Shoot the bottle. Now what? It's still no bending. It's still maintaining its level. The surface is still horizontal. What's your point, caller? And surprise, it will crawl on the exterior of your hand. You need to experiment with forces in nature. Dale, come on, use your mind, you can do it. You show me where in nature we are flying about in a zero-G plane or on the ISS. I am here in nature. I was in nature yesterday and this morning, demonstrating practically how liquid behaves. Sophism, people. This is what I'm talking about religious institutions and how they try and twist your mind, right? This ISS bollocks, the zero plane bollocks, they're misrepresentations of actual reality. We do not live in those conditions. If you're making a claim about objective reality, you show it practically in nature. As I've expressed before, we live in a gaseous environment, no in a fucking aeroplane, no in some imaginary tin can floating about in a vacuum. Right? We will get onto this, the opposing pressure systems. I will do a part 3 of liquid and why water kills the globe. Then we will discuss opposing pressure systems and how they work in actual reality. Right? So that you can then see that these claims about the gaseous environment of Earth next to a vacuum without a solid barrier is preposterous. Again, contradicting actual reality. Right? Now, people, the only thing you have is images. This is what they're doing. This is a religious institution. This is how it operates. It is devious at its very core. Right? The goal is to make everything deceptive in order to get you to believe it, to hold you in a state of mind that they want you in. Right?
And they're buying it.
Stop it!
It doesn't matter if I make this bottle 100 miles long. Okay? The surface is horizontal. Look at it here. Look at it. How the water pushes up and the surface stays flat. That is the globe killer. You need to share this information with people. You need to help them to realise how the brainwashing has warped their perception of reality. Right? Point it out in practical form and they cannot escape it. The only way that they can escape it is by entering into self-delusion. Right? And these trolls who are involved in this are trying to perpetuate that delusion of people, and it's unacceptable. Right? So, no more videos looking over vast bodies of water. Right? The water is the tool. You don't need anything else. You don't need a 3-mile fucking spirit level test. Just find a body of water. If it's not flowing anywhere, you know that the place that the water is sitting in is level. Right? Peace, people.
And here at the horizon, how come we can see this line going towards us if the water is bent, curved, as it's said How can water curve? But wait, where have I seen this before? That's right, headlights of cars on a wet road does this. We see it all the time, don't you even question it? Don't you see the headlights are very close to the ground to do this? So to do this at home, I got this plastic paper that I got flat, bent and slightly flat. Up against the source, slightly bent. You can see it's coming towards the curved part of the plastic paper. And on the curved part it doesn't do anything, but on the flat part it makes you question. Don't you think Earth is flat now? Yes, Earth is beautiful and flat. Water levels out. It cannot bend, for God's sake. How can you even believe such a thing? Oh my God. You can try this at home yourselves. And you will find the exact same conclusion. It is flat. It must be flat. Your senses tells you all the time that it is flat. And why is this so important? Why do I even bother to make these videos when all I get are negative comments and mocking and ridiculing? Except for a few ones, I love you. I do it because it's the truth. And the Bible tells you this. God tells you that this is the truth, and you're one step closer to Him. God bless you all. I love you. Thank you for watching. Libertas out.
Here's an excellent example of how the sun reflected on water should appear if that water was curving round a ball. This is a screenshot from a video by COFO72. It's called Flat Earth Pieces, and it's part of a compilation of clips showing the moon as seen from New Zealand and the USA at the same time. Very much worth taking your time to check out. I've put a link in the description, so thanks a lot there for this excellent addition, and what I would say is proof that when we look out over the sea at sunset, or even when we see the moon above us, we always see the reflection going in a straight, level line across the water. If it was curved in any way, we would see it curving like we do in this picture as the sunlight reflection appears to curve up the wave. That's if you just turn this around and imagine it the other way going off into the distance, that's what we should see if the Earth was curving and the water was sticking to a curved ball. So as a comparison, here is what we usually see when the sun sets over water. It casts a straight, level reflection, no curve there, across the flat water. And at the end of this, you'll see as the sun sets how it kind of appears to veer off to the right. I'll leave that to your own discretion as to what you think is happening there. Thank you very much.
Whoa.
The pen is blue. The pen is blue! The goddamn pen is blue!
I'm really fascinated by the Google Earth tool that allows you to view a elevation profile between 2 points or a drawn path over the surface of the Earth. What I thought would be interesting is if I mapped out a portion of the Nile River. The Nile River is the longest river in the world. I think in total distance, it's almost 5,000 miles from the source point to where it empties out in the sea. But what I wanted to do was map out this section here that's shown in red so that we can see two bends. We could see the major bend here in the river, and then a major bend here. And we've been told all of our lives that water follows the path of least resistance. What we should see when we look at the elevation profile of this line segment is that the highest point elevation should be here, and the lowest point elevation should be here. Secondly, after we look at that, I wanted to look at a cross section. If we were to start from this point where this green line is shown and end on this point, shouldn't the river flow in the low points of this cross section? And so first things first, let's look at the Nile River segment. I'm going to switch it to the elevation profile. So here we have the beginning where I started to track it at 1,400 feet above sea level. And sure enough, as we follow the river, the gradual slope is downward. And then there are points where the elevation actually goes up. And what that means is that the water has to reach 1,238 feet above sea level to spill over that geographic limitation and then continue to flow downward. So where we see the upward trends in the feet above sea level is where we see the wider parts of the river. And so this continues to flow and gets wide and narrow based on the elevation and continues to go down. You can see that the Nile River flows from mostly south to north, but at this section here, it's actually flowing somewhat southward because of elevation and geographic limitations. And then we get to this large swell where you can see the river gets very wide at this point. And sure enough, it's because there is a dam that is holding the water in place at this point. And so what we should see when I zoom back out here is a major drop off from this kind of swollen part of the river to the remaining part of the river. So let's see if we can follow the arrow. And sure enough, right here is basically the peak of the dam. And then we see a major drop off immediately after it passes over. And the river continues to flow. So as I mentioned before, I thought it would be interesting to show a cross section of the landscape. Basically, if we were to cut the land in half and look at the half, what would it look like? Here's the elevation cross section, and what we should see is in the lowest parts of this elevation profile, that's where the river should flow. So here where it gets very low, we should see river. And what do we see? That's where the river's flowing. Here's another low point in the cross section, so the river should flow here, and sure enough it does. And here should be another point where the river flows in this low point, and sure enough it does. So all this to say, water has mass, it takes up space, it always takes the shape of its container, but most importantly, water follows the path of least resistance, which means that it is impossible. It is absolutely impossible for us to be living on a spinning globe. I drew a path from my dad's house in Denver, Colorado, to my house in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I want to show you something very interesting. When I choose to show the elevation cross section, you can see it's basically this red line. The starting point at my dad's house is 5,394 feet above sea level. And he's in Denver, Colorado, which is the mile-high city, so that's what you would expect. But then as you move east, and you can see the red arrow move east as I go that direction, the landscape starts to change where the elevation drops down and continues to drop. You go from the foothills of the Rocky Mountains into the plains of Colorado, Kansas, into Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and then finally you get into Cincinnati, Ohio, to my house, which is 764 feet above sea level. So what's interesting is Google Earth wants us to believe that the landscape makes this curve as shown here. But the elevation cross section actually shows that the landscape of the United States from my dad's house to my house follows this path. And most of us, when we were in elementary school, learned that the Rocky Mountains, which is close to where my dad lives, is the continental divide that divides the rainfall from east to west. I'm pretty sure when I was a kid, I've been to the Milner Pass, which is about 2 miles above sea level. And there's a sign that says the Great Divide separates drainage to the Atlantic from the drainage to the Pacific. It traverses America from Alaska almost to Cape Horn. And so that would make sense if the landscape does follow this topographical cross-section. I wanted to see what would happen when you look at the elevation cross-section over a great body of water. So starting at the northernmost point, as far as I can get, of Lake Michigan, and then traveling south, you can see that red line here, that the body of Lake Michigan is 574 feet above sea level, and it's level. There's no change in elevation, there's no curve. This cross-section shows what an undisturbed body of water looks like, and that's level. We know that to be true. There's 3 properties of liquids. They have mass, they take up space, and they always take the shape of their container. And so Lake Michigan from north to south is 574 feet above sea level. So then just to do another check, I wanted to see what the elevation profile would look like for Hudson Bay in Canada. Relatively a large undisturbed body of water. And you'll see here from the westernmost side, it shows an elevation of -2 feet below sea level, and it's level for a distance of over 879 miles. So what does all that mean? What I believe it means is that water is flat, water seeks its own level, therefore the idea that we're spinning on a globe is absolutely impossible.
Yeah, absolutely we do. And by the way, I love this graphic. I don't know who put this. Oh, Jaron put this in the chat. And this is something that's really amazing. You know, you fill up a glass with water and the refraction literally changes the direction of the arrow. And this is something that Mike Kavanaugh and Steve Torrance and Dr. Zach have been talking about for quite some time. You know, this refractive, well, several people, I won't just credit it to them, but several people have been looking at this, about these refractive properties of the atmosphere. In other words, the sun, the moon, the stars, what we perceive as their position is really just an apparent position because our atmosphere acts just like liquid. In fact, it's classified as a liquid. And its refractive properties essentially give us an entire lens effect, just like water does. Almost really no difference whatsoever. So just wanted to throw that out there.
And isn't it crazy that the reason that we say that the Earth is curved like a ball is because these surveyors go out and measure the horizon in the distance and see that it drops. But we're looking right here, we see that this arrow drops. So that means that anything going through a medium is going to drop, which means the horizon going through, when we're looking through air, is going to drop, which if you measure that and call it a curve, just think of it as the opposite way. If it was the opposite way that going through mediums caused it to rise, then we would think we were on the inside of a ball. That's how ridiculous it is. But we know there's nobody above us upside down, just as we know there's nobody below us upside down. So we're smart enough to say the Earth is not a ball. But no, these guys, they're going to go ahead and, even though they have evidence right here that the horizon drops due to the medium, they're going to just look through telescopes, see the horizon drop, measure it, and say that's the Earth curving. Crazy.
Exactly. And notice, you know, and this goes right along with what I was saying earlier. When you change the viscosity of the atmosphere or your medium, it will pull things down. And that's exactly what we're witnessing here. And that can be done by either adding humidity or reducing the temperature, which increases density altitude, which means that it essentially brings it into a heavier, lower altitude, you know, produced by the temperature, which gives us a more dense atmosphere. There it is, folks, looking right at you, right in the face. Look at the severity of this drop. I mean, that is massive. And if you're going to tell me that you wouldn't be able to notice that from back here, I would say you're crazy.
The curvature on that tells us, when we put that into the equation, that we should have 0.08 inches of curvature, which break that down into centimeters. We should have 1/4 of 1 centimeter of change, yet they all of a sudden have 10 inches. Definitely seems scientific. Back to Deception Lagoon.
Remember, if the lake is flat, it would be the same height as before.
Now look at this view. I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. We can actually see the laser coming from the shore. So why isn't she behind some sort of wall of water? This is only at 3 miles, and look where the laser's going. Now it's shooting off into space. I mean, is the lake curved that much? It's another ridiculous lie.
I don't even think this beam is going to hit our boat.
Here's how we know that they are frauding the whole system. Because all they did was make their results match what they thought they should be. They used the curvature calculator, which for 3 miles equals 6 feet. However, they forgot to put in the eye height of the observer. If they would have done that and put in the 2 feet high laser pointer and then put a target distance of 3 miles, well, sorry. The target hidden height should have only been 1 foot, not 6. That's called science fraud, my friends. Yeah, when you don't do any tests, you just simply try and come to a predetermined result. Well, that's what you get, Hawking.
But we know the beam is level, so that suggests that the lake is now 6 feet lower.
Oh, so the lake is now 6 feet lower. Yeah, that's counterintuitive, I'd think. And you're ruining the minds of other people. Let's listen to John Cena, whose mind is being ruined.
Still have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that we measured the Earth at that lake.
I'll never look at a lake the same way. I'll never look at a big body of water the same way now that I know it's following the curvature of the Earth.
So let's recap here. We had 3 people live, all get brainwashed, and countless thousands, if not millions of others watching from home, all get brainwashed. Congratulations, science. More great evidence and results? I don't know.
To see a 6-foot drop when everything looked flat to me was kind of mind-boggling. To wrap your head around it in that short a time was a little difficult for me. I was like, this is crazy. I still have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that we measured the Earth at that lake. Perception is still it's a flat lake, but
the lake looks completely flat from up here.
Definitely kind of shattered my perspective in about 1 second. It made me rethink what was going on. To see a 6-foot drop when everything looked flat to me was kind of mind-boggling.
And they're buying it! If the lake is flat, the laser beam and the water will always be parallel to each other. Seen from a boat, the beam would always stay at the same height above the water, no matter how far you travel into the lake. But does that happen?
Because I want to hear a valid reason why this experiment that we're watching right here, and it's on our channel, anybody can go and look at it and read the comments. It's called the 7.5 mile flat earth laser test on a frozen lake. It was obviously very cold, likely below zero. And like I said, the things you have to consider here is that density altitude was likely identical on each side of the lake. The fact that it was below freezing tells you that the moisture component has been frozen out of the air, crystallized and dropped to the ground point blank. And the fact that he was able to track with that laser beam all the way across the lake, all 8 miles or 7.5 miles across the lake, tells you that, you know, refraction must be absolutely miracle working, you know, for it to be able to do that, except the fact that refraction couldn't be happening because you have identical density altitude on each side of the lake. It's kind of like if you shine a light through a glass of water. If you go on one side, and the water is essentially the same temperature, it's going to go straight across. Whereas if you start the light from above it, right, then it's going to hit that denser water and it's going to refract and kick it off to the side. Well, I'm saying that that condition simply would not exist over a lake that's frozen, you know, in the middle of the night. Not going to happen. And if it is, I'd like to see examples of it and also why this would invalidate the test. So, you know, I really think that, and the same thing goes for, you know, anybody that's looking at, this is kind of the same principle about lighthouses, right? Well, you know, it gets pretty darn cold at sea at night, right? And yet the lighthouses can be seen hundreds of miles away. And yes, sometimes the temperature is going to be above freezing. And yes, there could be then refraction in there. But on the cold winter's night, you know, let's face it, especially over the ocean, the temperature is pretty flippin' cold. And, you know, refraction just simply does not explain why people can see lighthouses from hundreds of miles away. It just doesn't follow. So again, this is my question to all you ballers and all you physicists out there. I truly, honestly want to know why this experiment would be invalidated, you know, and what role refraction would ever play in this.
Holy shit, Batman. Superman refraction.
The pen is blue. The pen is blue!